Welcome to my channel. This is Chad with Winning Tennis. That is delicious. Okay, this video is going to be ATP Forehand versus WTA Forehand. What is the difference? I've seen some videos out there. Some of them are good, some of them are not, but I want to make my own video and dispel the myths. If you're a guy, should you be hitting with the ATP Forehand or the WTA Forehand? Same thing, if you're a female, which one should you hit with? What are the differences? What does it matter? We're going to take a look at that today. In the next few minutes, you will know the difference. I will dispel the mysteries, and you will be able to decide for yourself which one is best for you. All right? Without further ado, let us please jump into the mix. All right, so the first thing I want to look at is the ATP Forehand. This is Grigor Dimitrov, and you can see he makes a unit turn. He gets his racket up, and he's now letting go of the racket with his non-dominant hand. And what he does, notice where his hand is. It's on the right side of his body. The difference is on the WTA Tour, they're going to end up bringing their hand or the racket. It's going to be more on the left side of their body. That's one of the major differences. They also do more of a loop where the men take the racket back. So we can see he takes the racket back. He places it down as if there was a table here. And you can see the strings are pointing down. Now, some of the women point the strings down, others have them pointing to the side. Most of the men will have them pointing down. Okay, now let's just rewind that for a little bit. Watch right there, that wrist lag with that 90-degree angle. That is typical of the ATP Forehand, right? Almost every ATP Forehand is going to have that wrist lag. I made a video on it, and if you want to see details on it, check out the video. And that's going to give them massive racket acceleration into the ball where they can generate higher speeds and more topspin. The follow through is essentially the same. He's following through by his shoulder. The follow through is really not going to make much of a difference on a WTA or ATP Forehand. You're just bringing the racket across. Okay, so that's Grigor Dimitrov. Let's take a look at another guy. All right, the guy right here, his name is Michael Mmoh. He's a young guy, maybe 20 years old. He just got his first ATP Tour win in Brisbane, and I was very impressed with what I saw. He's an American. He may be one of the great potential prospects. I think he won like a junior open, so he is very talented. His father was a professional tennis player. And so that's why I brought him up, because usually I show Federer and I show Nadal, but I want to show some new blood. And you know, all the kids right now are learning this ATP style forehand. So let's just rewind that just for a second. So we can see here that this is classic of all the guys and a lot of the women. They keep their non-dominant hand on the throat of the racket. And he's going to make a unit turn, so now his shoulders are facing the side. His left hand is still on the racket up about head height. And then right there, you can see when he removes his hand, he's not looping the racket and he's not bringing the racket back behind him. He's keeping it on the right side of his body, just as Dimitrov did. And then right there, we can see a perfect example of how the strings are facing directly to the floor. So his racket is perpendicular to the ground. It would be a 90-degree angle to the frame. And you can see again, it's on the right side of his body. The difference is on the WTA Tour, they're going to have this racket over onto the left side. Now, the racket will, okay, his flip actually, he keeps his right hand so far away from his body that the flip doesn't even go behind him. If this is the center line of his body, look how far his racket is. Some of the pros will have their racket extend back here, but they're not bringing the hand there. It's just their hand is closer to the body. But he's one of the few that I've seen that really keeps the hand far away from the body. Okay, and then bam, right into the ball. That's really the main difference. Let me just replay it. Let's take another look at the forehand in the complete motion. You can see he sets it down, and he gets that wrist lag, and he basically follows through under the shoulder, and that's it. So here's one more forehand, does the same thing. It's the same thing basically over and over, especially when the ball comes right to you. And that's the ATP forehand. Okay, let's take a look at the WTA forehand now. Alright, so we've seen two examples of the ATP forehand with Dimitrov and Mo. And this is Monica Puig, and I've featured her on my channel once before. I really like her. She won the 2016 Olympics. And here she is already. Let's go back a little bit. Alright, so here she's in a ready position. And she starts to make her unit turn. Now, notice one thing. I've noticed one thing with the women is that they take their non-dominant hand off the racket a lot sooner than the men. So they do that because they're going to create more of a loop where the men don't have to create the loop. So it's necessary to take the hand off the racket. Okay, so racket will go up high. Now, when the men bring it back, they're not bringing it as high. See how high that racket is above her head? The men will be probably like right here, and they're keeping their left hand on the racket if they're righties, and then they just set the racket back as I showed you. Right? Look how high that racket is. That's to create the loop. Now we can't really see behind her, but I can guarantee you this racket here is, and you can see from the shadow, is on the left side of her body. And that hand, you can see the hand is on the left side of her body right here as well, where the men would be. You saw Mo, his hand is out here. So that's one of the huge differences, the position of the arm and the hand in the racket. Okay, and now when she comes through, notice there's really no wrist lag. There's no snap in the wrist, but she does still have a bit of an angle, which she kind of creates. It's not, see with the guys, when they come forward, it's like almost an automatic thing where the wrist snaps back. Here they kind of generate it on the WTA tour. That's kind of the difference. She does release it a bit. Let's take a look at another one here. Okay, so she has her non-dominant hand on the racket for like a split second. She makes her unit turn. And let's make sure this is in, oh, look, this is normal. Let's put it in super slow motion. Alright, so her hand comes off the racket and then she makes this huge loop. You can see how high the racket goes up. And the racket's gonna drop. And you can see when she drops the racket, she already has this 90-degree angle. It's not being, like with the guys, it's something that happened as a result of their hips turning violently forward. But with the women, they kind of manufacture that. That's one of the huge differences too. Okay, she has a sort of Western grip here, like a semi-Western. And she comes through. Yep. Yep. That's the follow through is really all the same. Let's take a look at one more forehand from her. This looks like a backhand. No, it's a forehand. Okay, that was a split step, and now she's moving to the ball. And just one thing to point out, like a lot of people say, well, you know, you shouldn't set up until you should start setting up, especially if the ball is only like a step or two away. Start setting up. And there you can see how far the racket's going behind her. Look at that, racket's all the way to the left side of her body. You can't even see it at this point. She does have a wrist lag. Now she didn't begin her stroke forward yet, but she has that 90-degree angle. So the women kind of manufacture that. And you can see there's a lot less whip in the racket coming forward into the ball. And I might as well show you the last one right here. Let's just take a look at it full swing. Okay. Let's take a look at one more person. We'll take a look at Caroline Wozniacki. Alright, so here's Caroline, and she is in her, she's already got her unit turn going. And you know, one other thing to point out is that some of the women hit more in a neutral stance. This is considered a neutral stance when the feet are in this position. Most of the guys are hitting more in an open stance. Now, there's no, you know, one time, like for instance, people ask me, where should my feet always be? Well, it depends. You know, just there's a lot of reasons in tennis why you might want to hit in a neutral stance as opposed to an open stance. And okay, so she does the same thing. The racket goes up a little higher. She brings it further in back of her. And we don't see that violent wrist snap. That is really one of the main, I would say the three main things about the differences of the WTA forehand and ATP forehand is the lack, number one, lack of the wrist snap or wrist lag. Number two is the loop, so women loop and men take back. And number three, I would say, is that the racket goes to the left side of the body for the women, of course, like the righties. Like the hand comes like inside here, so it's her hand is more towards almost on the left side of her body, and the men are all the way out here on the right. So those would be the main differences. The follow through and everything like that, the rotation is kind of similar, and that's why it would be hard to compete if this was your forehand on the ATP tour, especially if this is your size, because as I'm going to show you in the next example, there's another guy out there who has neither a WTA or ATP forehand. He has his own forehand, and he was at one time one of the most dominant players in the world. And we're going to take a look at him right now. And that man is Juan Martin Del Potro. And this guy is like one of those, whirly birds that he's just got his own thing going on. So let's take a look at this forehand. First, let's just look at the whole forehand. Okay, that doesn't look like... That's like the furthest thing from an ATP forehand right there. Let's take a look one more time. Okay, so he also keeps his left hand on the racket, but very briefly. And he keeps his racket in a kind of like a straight vertical position, which is very odd. A lot of the guys have their racket tilted forward, as I've shown on the videos. Now, he kind of has a loop, but he keeps it on the right side of his body. And look at where his strings are pointing. I mean, a lot of the guys on the tour right now, their strings are starting to point down. And his strings never point down, they stay to the side. So that's kind of similar to a WTA type of forehand where the strings don't point down. And notice he really doesn't have a wrist lag, and he doesn't have a 90-degree angle. He does have an angle here. It might be 60, 70 degrees perhaps, but it's not a 90-degree angle. Actually, I'm sorry, not 60, 70, but it would be more like 110 or 120. But for him, it works because he's like 6'6" or 6'7", probably weighs 200 pounds, and he's just made this style work for him. And this is very odd to see this kind of forehand. So what does this tell you? It tells you that, you can make anything work as long as the strings are hitting the ball hard enough and you have good timing like Del Potro, then why change it? I've seen him play, and he's just got a massive forehand. So that's it. That's our video. Okay, it's now said and done. You now understand the difference between the ATP and the WTA forehand. You can decide for yourself which one you'd like to choose, and you can also video yourself and see which one you do, if any at all. Or, like Del Potro, as we've seen, maybe you are the anomaly. You are the person that has neither the WTA or ATP forehand, and you have your own forehand. There is no one-size-fits-all for tennis. Anything can work as long as the racket strings are hitting the ball with enough pace and the right angle, then anything can work. And we've seen that with different strokes. I'm Chad with Winning Tennis. I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. And if you like the video, please give it a like. I'll have a lot more videos coming out in 2018. And if you have any video suggestions, just let me know. I'll be glad to make them. Thank you.